I'd like to welcome everybody out to the Sunset Beach Town Council meeting January the 10th, 2022. We'll be going in closed session pursuant to 143-318-11A5 to establish or to instruct the public body's staff or negotiating agents concerning the position to be taken by or on behalf of the public body in negotiating the price and other material terms of a contract or proposed contract for the acquisition of real property by purchase, option, exchange, or lease, or the amount of compensation and other material terms of an employment contract or proposed employment contract. Do I have a motion to go in closed session?
So,
Have a second?
Second.
No discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to call this meeting back to order. Do I have a motion to come out of closed session?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'd like to welcome everybody out to the January 10th, 2022 council meeting. Does any member of council have a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest in regards to any items on the agenda? If so, please state at this time. Mr. Borman? No. Mr. Nern?
No.
Mr. Corbett?
No.
Mr. Hargraves?
No.
All right, moving on. Amendment and approval of the draft agenda. Does any council member have anything needs to be changed or addressed in regards to any of these things? Mr. Borman? For me. Mr. Nern?
No. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Do we need the Fireman's Board on here? Fireman's Relief Board? Okay, no, nothing.
All right, Mr. Hargraves?
No.
All right, do I have a motion that we approve the draft agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next up, action, action discussion resulting from the closed session. It is the council's pleasure that the council will offer a position of town administrator to Mrs. Lisa Anglin at a salary of $115,000 while retaining her role as town clerk. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All right, any discussion?
We think that we've been well served by Miss Anglin, and she'll continue to do so.
Anything else?
Nope.
Ms. Anglin, would you be able to accept this if this was offered to you?
Graciously, and
All
I
right.
appreciate the offer.
All right, without a vote, the vote. Do I have an aye?
Aye.
None opposed. Thank you. Congratulations, Ms. Anglin, our town administrator. Next up will be our general council discussion. Does any member of council have anything that needs to be addressed?
Nothing.
Foreman, good?
No.
Mr. Corbett?
I do. I'd like to say thanks to our first responders for their service over the holidays. It was a very busy time, very busy season for them. And personal thanks for the early AM on the 31st of December when they responded to a 9/11 call on my behalf. I just point out that was early AM the 31st, not late after the celebrations. I'd like to recognize and commend firefighters Chris Malone and Dylan Matthews, along with Brunswick County EMS team of Pan Molina and Thomas Klein for their rapid and professional response to my emergency. And I'm feeling much better now. Thank you. Thanks to your crews.
Anyone else? All right, moving on. Public comments on agenda items only. Does anyone have anything on the agenda item? If you do, please step forward at this time and state your name, your address. Just please state your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes. If you get to about the 2:30 mark, I may just interrupt you just briefly to just let you know you got about 30 minutes so you can tie your things up, okay?
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Tracy Jones, 418 29th Street. I want to ask a question about the Cabana ordinance change for restricting cabanas between 29th Street and 3rd Street. So, first of all, there are no meeting minutes on the website for the December meetings. So I had to go on and watch YouTube to find out what happened at the December 14th meeting when the presentation was given. So it was a very busy season for the fire department, but it was a good one, according to the presentation. And the cabanas were where they were supposed to be, and the emergency vehicles were able to go behind the cabanas, between the cabanas and the dunes. So the only reason that was given for the restriction on the cabanas was that it's getting too crowded around the pier. Well, that's just going to keep happening because the developments are going to keep coming, and it's just going to keep happening. So are we going to keep moving the restrictions out, for one? And two, there was never really a good reason on what's the advantage of doing the restriction? What if we did this restriction, what improves? You already said the emergency vehicles can go between the cabanas and the dunes. So what do we gain by not having cabanas between 27th Street and 29th Street? That's my question. Because now people on 27th, 28th, 29th are all fighting for spaces on the other side of 29th along with the other houses. And there are people that live there that need the cabanas, there are rentals, etc. I just want to know, what's the advantage for changing the ordinance before everybody agrees? Because there was no conversation. It was, well, there are no rentals on 3rd Street, was a comment that was made. But there's some on the other side, but it seems okay. And so I agree with that. I agree with it. There was no conversation on what the advantage was. And that's what I would like to understand. The advantage for not having cabanas. That's it.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Go ahead, sir.
Rich Serrato, 517 Twisted Oak Lane, Sunset Beach. I noticed there's going to be a budget amendment this evening that calls for doubling our legal fees. One has to wonder, it's going to be increased to $186,000. One has to wonder, what are our legal headwinds? With all due respect, nothing seems to ever get settled. Let me give you a couple of examples. Jaguar's Lair. The attorney spent over a year negotiating what he classified as an ironclad agreement. And I think John was present at that time. It occurred when Peter Larkin was on the council. That's how many years ago that we're talking about. Next month is the 2-year anniversary that the agreement was violated, and nothing has been said, done, or communicated. It's like it went into a black hole. The developments on 904, the ETJs on 904, will be completed before Jaguar's Lair. That's not fair. And I think it should be addressed. And we have another issue. On the east end of the island, the emergency exit, that's still chained. It's been chained over 2 years. Who owns the land? Is it the town? Or is it the property owner? Now, the town sued the property owner under eminent domain to take over the land and build a parking lot on Palm Cove. That's about as realistic. In fact, it's unrealistic. And the other thing I just wanted to talk about, hopefully I got a couple of minutes. The town just purchased an $800,000 plat. Is that correct? And I guess it's across from Town Hall. And we spent $75,000 for a land, I think, on the north side of town. I think last year or 2 years ago. And we bought the land next to Town Hall, and we built a parking lot. Now, that cost...
Sorry.
No.
That's about 30 seconds.
No, that cost about $600,000. The land is $800,000, and the other property we purchased is $75,000. That's over $1 million. Now, my suggestion is simple. We need to prioritize our land purchases. I think it's great for the town to buy land. However, we've got a major problem coming up. There's not going to be any parking on the island. With all this development, we're going to have to maybe even think of a possible eminent domain on the island for parking.
Yes, sir.
And this is where our focus should be. So I think future purchases should be prioritized before we find ourselves raising taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do I have anyone else? Go ahead, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Katie Hovermail. I'm at 1429 Bay Street on Sunset Beach. I sent all of you an email earlier today about my concern with the 40th Street walkway, and I have since found out that the negotiations are that the Public Works Department is speaking to the contractors about creating some passages. That problem is being addressed. So that was going to be my comment. And I would like to say I'm very proud of our Public Works Department. I'm on the beach quite a bit, and I see everyone in action there. And I think all the staff work very hard, and they're very nice. My other comment has to do with the planning board, the people that the candidates you're considering for the planning board. And I don't know if you take public comment about that, but I hope you will strongly consider the appointment of Bob Forrester and Richard Dysinger for those positions. I've worked with Mr. Forrester, and I've met Mr. Dysinger, and I think both of them have much to offer for the planning board. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Katie.
Anyone else? Go ahead, sir.
Good evening. My name's Ed O'Neill. I live at 915 Shoreline Drive down on the curve. And I'm listening to the discussion about the land purchases that are being made. And I think it's good to protect the town and acquire land where we can at a reasonable price. The beach is very crowded. It's a wonderful beach. People are moving in and they're coming in droves, and parking is a problem. And I would respectfully request that the board the council consider that maybe some of this land be used for parking, and we shuttle people back and forth to the beach. You probably need an independent contractor to do the shuttle, but I think there's got to be a way where we can alleviate the parking, and maybe with some of the land the town is acquiring, we could set aside some of that for parking and have people shuttle back and forth, maybe for a fee, so that it's self-funding. But I request that that be considered in the long-term planning. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill.
Do I have any more? Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. Uh-oh.
Do it from here, okay?
That's perfectly fine.
Karen Joseph, 915 San Pepper Bay Drive. I know that as a council member, you sometimes have to deal with the slings and arrows. Hi.
Introduce yourself again, please, so it's on the record. And
Karen
everybody can.
Joseph, 915 Sandpiper Bay Drive. As I said, I know sometimes you have to deal with the slings and arrows. I want to congratulate you on hiring Lisa Anglin as our town administrator. I have all the faith in the world in her that she will be here in that position for many years to come. So congratulations on a job well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. If not, we will be moving on to our consent agenda. The Financial Department November 2021 report, the Public Works Department November 2021 report, Fire Department November 2021 report, the Planning Department November 2021 report, the Building Inspection Department November 2021 report, and the Police Department November 2021 report. Does any member of council have any questions that need to be addressed in regards to these agendas?
No, it's all very clear for me.
Okay.
I
Turner, you have
only
anything?
have one question for Carrie. Previously, you've listed the addresses of those houses where a CO was issued. I hadn't seen it the last couple of times, and I'd be interested to see those addresses when you make your reports.
Okay, you talking about on the weekly report or the
I'm
the
talking
monthly,
about this report.
the monthly report? Okay, we can certainly add those on there as well. Yeah, I put them on the weekly, but we can certainly carry them over to the monthly. That's not a problem.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anyone else?
Anyone else got anything for Planning Department? Go ahead, sir.
No, not for you.
Okay,
Not for you. Sorry.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right.
You got any questions?
Following up Ms. Katie Hovermill's question, Dustin, could you kind of explain, because I also got several inquiries from different places, not just Katie, on what is being done to make sure that the 40th Street walkway is ADA compliant?
It's basically being upgraded to the ADA requirements of what it is, the 42-inch guardrail, handrail all the way down on it, so you can actually hold on to the rail as you go down. You won't be holding on to the guardrail itself. They actually have a rail attached to it. It'll be ramped all the way out, all the way down to the beach. And once you get to the beach, you'll make a right-hand turn and go towards Bird Island with a ramp. So you'll be ramped all the way. Won't be no steps, anything like that. So it'll be ADA. The width is 5 foot in between the posts, so it meets that. So, but we are looking at, like I said, a couple of kickouts, what they call them, down to access to make it like a passing zone.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Dustin, when do you expect that to be completed?
It'll probably be about the middle of next month, but that's a long one.
Oh.
Yeah, because it's about, I think, around approximately about 800 foot long when it's all done.
Definitely before the season.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, because this contractor has 3 more to do on the east end also.
Thank you.
Okay.
And they'll start afterwards.
Yeah, after this one.
After the 40th is finished, they'll start the East End ones, or they'll start
Yes.
while the East End is ongoing?
While 40th Street's
I mean, the
ongoing.
40th Street is ongoing.
While 40th Street's ongoing, once he gets to a point that he can move his part of his crew, he'll move it down there and start tearing out and working on them.
Good. Thank you.
Dustin, do you know how many pickouts you're going to have on it?
We're going to look and see what we do, 100 or 200 foot. We're going to look at what we can do
Okay.
as you go through there, because you got to have them on a flat section, not a ramp.
Okay.
So we got to make sure where we do it as where it's flat.
All right. Good.
Good.
Good. Thank you.
Mr. Corbett, do you have any more questions or any more?
Yeah, for the planning department. Chad, could you bring us up to date? You had some developments in the planning board last week on what's going on in our community.
Absolutely. So Seaside Village, single family. This is the old Seaside Townhomes lot in Seaside Village. A preliminary plat was approved for 16 single family lots. This was done in accordance with Dave and Kelly Stewart, their management of the POA HOA there. They got approval from them. Also, planning board unanimously approved this for preliminary plat for 16 lots.
Those are the lots behind the townhouses on Queen Anne.
Yeah, this would
Queen Anne
be
area.
Queen Anne. The road behind it would then be renamed. I don't know the name off the top of my head,
Okay.
but it will be brought up to standards. I've worked with Dustin and Public Works to make sure that that road through there will be up to par with addressing and need 911 to make sure that's good through there. Right now, you would need an alignment driving through there to get to your house on some days.
16 single family units.
16 single family lots. They're small. I don't know the dimensions off the top of my head, but that was all done through the management company with Carolina Dreams and the POA HOA in Sunset Village.
Thanks.
Second one that was approved was Birdwatch Phase 2 final plat. Phase 1 was approved for 13 lots back in September or August. The remaining 36 lots 14 through 49, was approved this past Thursday. That will complete that project subdivision at build out. I know that Carrie can attest to this, but there are permits already been pulled for phase 1, and then they will start. They're working on recording the plat and getting GIS to give them parcel numbers to and addresses for those lots, remaining lots over there, so they can start pulling permits for those. So all the infrastructure's in, the street trees are in, the streets, the sidewalks, signs, all that looks good.
So they're ready to build.
So they are ready to build. Yes, sir. And then the third one was the Sanctuary Phase 1 final plat. I asked Landon Weaver with Bill Clark Homes how many phases they looking at doing. I think originally it's somewhere between 8 and 10. It could very well be more than that, especially how they consider phasing that out. It's about 398 homes, so just shy of 400. 61 lots, if my calculations are correct, was approved for final plat to build out their infrastructure is in according to those lots, and they have an amenity center approval with swimming pool that was approved in 2021. That will be constructed as well.
part of that stage 1 process. So,
Yes.
so the first set of houses to go in will get their swimming pool and clubhouse and all of that.
Yep. 61 lots. Yep.
Okay.
And then we're also working on connections between, with Angels Trace Road as it comes back online with the washout. Hopefully we'll get some interconnectivity between 2 or 3 different subdivisions. That way it would make Seaside Village more accessible, but also have golf cart communities and keep more people off of Seaside Road and Sunset Boulevard.
Good.
Thank you, sir. Anything else? Yes, sir.
The special use permit
Yes, sir.
that was issued for what area?
So the special use permit issued by the Board of Adjustment back in November was for a 2-building. I don't know I think the unit number was in the staff report. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but it was over there in front of, Lisa, help me out. What's the medical center, senior center? Sunset Commons. So it's going to be directly in front of that and work in accordance with that facility.
Okay. 2 54-unit buildings.
Yep. And I worked with fire department planning, public works, and Carrie. It's going to be sprinkled. It's going to, they're working on their architectural drawings to submit to the building and fire department to pull permits as well.
Great, thanks.
Anything else? Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member of council have any questions in regards to any more of these departments? Not, do I have a motion? Do we accept these?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any member of staff that would wish to leave now, you can go ahead and go if you don't have anything else on the agenda. All right. Moving on, our town administrator report, our former assistant town administrator that was intermediate entertainer. Now you're up. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I want to start out by saying thank you so much for the vote of confidence. I will not let you down. For my report, first thing is website email notifications. Everybody knows that I send out the email notifications. And for the past couple of months, I've noticed an increase in undeliverable messages coming back to me. And I've talked to the website host who is having some trouble with various email providers, Yahoo, AOL, Verizon, and a couple others. They recommended a fix that GovOffice has done, so hopefully you will start getting those emails again. However, if you do not, please go back on the website, homepage, bottom lower corner, and sign up again. Then you will receive a validation email that you will need to follow the instructions to make sure that you get reconnected to the website. And then make sure that you click, if you just want meeting notices, just that box. If you want just emergency, that box. If you want both, you need to check both boxes. And that will take care of getting you back on the subscriber list. There's a vehicle on the west end at Bird Island that has been there since Saturday. It is a research team from the North Carolina Coastal Reserve that do studies and research at Bird Island. Unfortunately, on Saturday, they managed to lose the car keys at some point and have been unable to find those. They were out there today with metal detectors, and I'm not sure if they located and were able to get that car off. But we are aware that there is a car there, so it is not in any danger of the water coming up around it or it floating away or any of that. In Tara's report for this month, the ARP funds, she gave you a little briefing in there. Since her report, the ARP final ruling has been released now, and she is researching that and will be able to give you a list of allowable expenses at an upcoming meeting, either next week for the January 18th meeting or the first meeting in February. Also in her report, she provided you with a recycling program report. For this year that we're currently in, that started October 1, we've got 1,025 customers that are participating, which is an increase of 32 customers over the last year's numbers. We welcome anyone interested to participate to complete an application online. That can be found in the public bulletin board section of the website. You can also find the garbage and recycling calendar there. I know a lot of rental homes look for that calendar to display it for their guests. Let's see what else. Dredging project. The dredging project is ongoing with the crews working 7 days a week. They're not working 24 hours yet, and don't anticipate that they'll need to, but they do have that option. But they are working 7 days a week. Friday afternoon, there was a pipeline rupture, and the operation was shut down immediately while repairs were made. Those took overnight and on into Saturday. They resumed dredging Saturday afternoon. Sam Morrison with Moffett and Nickel will attend the January 18th meeting to provide you with an update on the current dredging project and to provide the council with the recommendations for moving forward with the dredging of the feeder channel, Finger Canals, Bay Area, and Marion Turtles Creek. Parking lot next door is almost completed. Paving and striping were completed last week. The fence installation and the sidewalks are going in this week. Dustin is checking to see Brunswick Electric's schedule to come put the lighting in, and the landscaping and the rain gardens will be completed in the spring. Dustin talked about the 40th Street walkway. The contractor notified us today that they'll be moving their machines to the beach side of the walkway to start setting pylons. And then Dustin is meeting with the engineer tomorrow to talk about those kickouts that he told you about. And then finally, Mr. Green, our roll card attendant, has announced his retirement, and his last day is Thursday, January 13th. Jerry Todd in the Public Works Department will be assuming that role in the meantime, and we'll put an employment application out or an advertisement out this week. So
That's
if you
a
know of
part-time
anybody who
position,
wants
right?
a part-time position, rolling the carts back, applications online. And I'm answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Ms. England?
Nope.
No, thank you, ma'am.
Thanks.
Moving on to our old business, a budget amendment number 2 for the fiscal year of 21-22. Everyone's seen this on the council. If you have any questions, any comments, please state at this time. Mr. Borman. Mr. Nern.
We've been over this. I have nothing further.
Okay.
I don't have anything further.
Nothing.
I don't have any additional questions.
All right.
No.
Do I have a motion to approve the budget amendments? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moving on next, old business number 2, consideration of appointments for the planning board members. What is the pleasure of council on this?
Well, first, let me advise everybody that Bob Forster withdrew his application
What was that, early today?
early today.
Yep. Okay. So that leaves us with 3 candidates in the in the pool after we went through our first vote. That's Carol Santavica, Richard Dysinger, and Gerald Burns. I just one thing before we go any further than that. We had 8 very qualified, capable candidates who signed up initially for this. It's a very important job. People recognize it's an important job, and it's extremely encouraging to see that many people sign up and apply for the position. The downside of that, it made it very difficult. It makes it difficult for us to go through a process of choosing. And so what we did was the first thing, we all ranked everybody 1 through 8, gave it to Lisa, and came up, and that's where we got our first cut. Robert Forrester was on that first cut, but he withdrew this afternoon. All 3 candidates are very capable. Carol Santavica has served the town quite a bit for a long time. Richard Dysinger and Gerald Burns are comparatively new to the town, very energetic, very focused on tuning in onto what's going on in the town, and good. We're happy that all three of them have made their applications. Does anybody else want to say anything, or for me to keep meandering on?
You have anything?
You about said it all. I do want to point Richard Dysinger. He brings a lot of knowledge and seriously wants to get involved with town doings. That would be the choice that I will put forward to discuss.
Like to say as well that it was a difficult choice to make because we had very capable candidates, all of them. To come to the top four was even a difficult choice, and now to narrow it down to two is hard to do as well. I would agree with Councilman Nern that Mr. Dysinger is a good candidate to provide what we need on the planning board, and I would add to that Mr. Burns as a candidate that we should consider to be filling the second seat.
Hargraves, you got anything, sir?
Yeah, I have a comment. My first comment has to do with the number of people who came to interview. This was a world's record, I understand, as far as Sunset Beach was concerned, as far as getting involved in committees and boards and so on. So it was great to have so many people come in, to talk to the people, understand where they were coming from. I've learned a little bit about the town, them, and their interest in the planning board. I have to agree with Tom. I would also support the two candidates, Gerald Burns and Richard Dysinger. In my opinion, both demonstrated knowledge of the workings and the importance of the planning board. Both gave me the impression that they were very willing to learn, because there's a lot to learn, a lot of work to be done, but put in the necessary time and to be team players. And I think they'd represent the citizens of Sunset Beach as positive members of the planning board. So therefore, I also agree that Gerald Burns and Richard Dysinger should be the appointees. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Corbett?
I agree with the consensus, and this brings new blood into and energy into our planning board. Is very difficult because Carol Santavica has served for many years, and there's probably nobody either on the current board or the past boards that share the same knowledge. I think with all the challenges that we face coming up, an injection of fresh faces into this process is something that the planning board needs and will help the town. So I also endorse the idea of Mr. Dysinger and Mr. Burns. So may I make a motion?
Yes, sir, you go ahead.
I move that we nominate Richard Dysinger and Gerald Burns for the positions on the planning board for 3-year appointments going through to February 2025.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Lisa, you'll reach out to those two candidates. Thank you.
And again, thank you, Carol.
Next up, we'll go to new business. The Ordinance Amendment 9507, Cabanas. Go ahead, Lisa.
Mayor, if I may, in addition to Ms. Katie Hoverbill's comments and Ms. Tracy, I want to remind you all that you did receive an email from Ben Kennedy, who owns Beach Boy Cabanas, that also expressed some concerns with you all moving this. And he also offered a couple of example or remedies for the vendors to start at 6 versus 7, and for the cabanas to be 5 feet apart instead of 10. So just for the record, that you have those 3 comments.
Could we ask Chief Hassemeyer to,
Yes, most
to come
definitely.
forward and move into the hot seat? There's a smile behind here, sorry.
Can you address those issues, Paul? One in regards to the 1st, 3rd, and the 27th to 30th, those issues there. Can you address what was, I mean, we've had that asked, so I would like for that to be addressed for the public in regards to what was the stance on that, trying to move those out? Can you give a little bit more explanation, please?
Can I throw a little bit more in that question?
Somebody keeping me a list so I don't lose track.
Throw them a sub.
The change in where the tie downs go, where does that play into putting the cabanas 5 feet apart, or
Maybe why don't we go one question at a time?
Yeah.
And start off between moving them out to 3rd Street to 29th Street.
I'd rather confuse him.
I won't get confused. So with this earlier comments about the previous meeting, to be perfectly honest, that was a whirlwind hour and a half I was up here with you, and I didn't rewatch it. So I can't confirm or deny exactly what we said and talked about that day. I think we have pretty good notes on it, and some of what we talked about I wrote down in that folder over there, and I'm going to try not to bring it over here because there's a football game at 8. As far as moving it out, there's been a lot of discussion and observations, especially over the last 3 years, and supported by Deputy Chief Childers, Deputy Chief Adams, that every year they tell me the beach gets busier. This is the busiest year yet. This is the busiest year yet. This past year, we had a lot of flying cabanas. So one of those days, they were all over both sides of the pier. They were over the dunes. So one of the easiest comments for me is I'm trying to figure out how to make some of these things safer on the beach because the crowds are getting bigger. So one, it comes back to that. 2, I'm out there a lot. The other deputy chiefs are out there a lot. And I'm out there a lot when we're pulling a jet ski. I'm out there a lot when Dustin Screw's pulling a trailer and a tractor. And it is crowded around the pier. I'm trying to get more space for us so we can move and hopefully nobody's in the way. Cabanas, I'm not going to put a time on the amount of time that Beach Patrol spends on cabanas, but it's a lot. And it's not just in the morning. It's in the afternoon. It's all the way through the end of the day. We're trying to get a little bit of space in there, and we had a lot of discussions in November, probably October, November, with multiple parties that were in play, and this seemed like a good compromise. I'm not sure if that answers the question or not. As far as the tie downs, the 10 feet in between, I don't know where that really came from, other than I've heard some discussion of years past that we wanted cabanas 10 feet apart so you could get an emergency vehicle between them. My opinion on that is even with 10 feet, we're not getting an emergency vehicle between cabanas because there's chairs, there's coolers, there's kids playing, there's all kinds of stuff going on in between cabanas. That's why we keep at each beach access between the poles, we keep that lane open with no cabanas so we can drive through there if we have to. And we'll essentially, when it's busy, throw coolers, umbrellas, everything else out of the way if we got to drive through. And that happens. It happened a bunch of times last year, and it'll happen again this year, I have no doubt. But the 10 feet rule, I don't know. If we amend the ordinance to allow the tie down strings to be per manufacturer recommendation, 10 feet apart, and then you have tie downs. There's going to be tie down strings in between the cabanas. If you move them to 5 feet, they might be into each other's cabanas. I don't know. I think some of these things we're going to have to see what happens this summer. We already know a little bit with the tie downs coming out the back that towards the emergency lane, we want to keep the emergency lane open. And we have troubles with the emergency lane all the time with chairs being set up, people in the emergency lane. It's every day I drive on the beach. I have to get people to move stuff out of the emergency lane. So we already know cabanas might have to wiggle forward ocean side of those poles a little bit to keep the tie downs out of our way too. But that's one of those things we're going to have to see how it goes if you amend that part of the ordinance. There was, I forget what it was, I'll have to get my notebook, but we counted cabanas on July 4th this year. And several other weekends were just as busy as July 4th. If some of those other things about enforcing farther down on the east end, there's going to be cabanas from wherever we say they can start to Palm Cove, and from wherever we say they can start on the west end past 40th. I can guarantee you.
I had received a number of comments from a bunch of people because they know I kind of tune in on the cabanas and from the conversation. So if I could just clarify a couple things, my understanding from the last discussion and the discussion that you and I have had, we are still keeping the 12-foot footprint. We're not changing that because of the tie downs, and the tie downs go outside the footprint.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Part of the discussion that we had on keeping that 10-foot spacing, even with the tie downs you covered, is that still would leave some room for people to walk in between. It wouldn't leave the access ways. But if you put the cabanas closer together, it really starts to get congested and you run into a safety problem with all the tie downs. Am I overstating that, or is that, it requires people to actually watch where they're going when they go between the cabanas. We're keeping them basically on that imaginary line between the garbage can poles, with a little bit of flexibility, watching to see that the tie downs that do happen to extend into the emergency lanes do not extend too far. That's sort of going to be a judgment thing as time goes on, as we learn. Is that kind of accurate from the discussion?
Correct.
So,
and I think some variables with that will be the different manufacturers. For example, a wind-driven device, the Shibumi that we've seen a lot of them out there, the tie downs in front, so it's going to be ocean side. We're not going to have any strings from that on the back.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So
that's
as
one example of many.
As technology changes, we got to look and still assess what's going on. One of the questions from one of the cabana vendors was, okay, you're taking away our space. What do we get in return? And the suggestion was move them 5 feet together, move the cabanas closer together or not. Just to be clear, one of the things we haven't done, we limit vendors to a total of 150 cabanas with a limitation for how many packages of 10, yeah. Right? Packages of 10, 15 packages of 10. We're not changing the number of cabanas that can be on the beach. We're just moving down. They can't be in those first few streets. So there's not a negative impact in terms of the number of cabanas. The impact is how far out they have to space them. That'd be a management thing. I guess the other thing that came up was so with those, I think with all of that, the changes that you have proposed I find are within within the limits of the conversation that we had and what we're trying to do. The one thing that was not discussed was moving from 7 a.m. to 6 a.m. for the vendors to set up. I don't know exactly when it was, but 2 or 3 years ago, we moved it from earlier up to 7 a.m. just because of the general disturbance perceived by visitors when the vendor trucks are driving up and down the street. They're dumping the people out, they're dumping the vehicles out, and they're going back and forth. So one of the reasons was to keep the noise down while our visitors are waking up in the morning. So that was the reason I think that it was moved from an earlier time around 6 o'clock. Katie, you're shaking your head. I got that wrong?
Sorry.
Or did it go from 8 o'clock to 7?
I'm sorry, were you saying 6 o'clock, going back to 6 o'clock?
Well, the vendors want to go back to 6 o'clock.
I'm sorry, but another consideration is the turtle patrol.
Ah.
Does the turtle patrol up to 7 o'clock?
Okay, that was one that we didn't even have. Thank you. But the point being, we had moved for a variety of reasons from 6 o'clock back up to 7 o'clock, and the turtle patrol is one that had slipped my mind. So I would argue against changing the time for setting up. So that's my input.
The suggestion for the time change, I believe, was to allow the commercial vendors to have an additional period of time that there's a conflict between the private people that are coming down, setting up their own cabanas, and the commercials. They're all fighting for the space. And I think the intention for that was that they would get an additional hour that they would not have to battle with the private vacationers that are setting up their own cabanas.
Well, the way it is now, both the vendors and the visitors who are renters at the beach or residents at the beach, have the same startup time, so they have the same advantage of getting out there and staking their claim in their area.
Yeah.
And I'd say that's part of doing business.
Yeah, I don't know how to solve that problem. I'm just saying that that's what his intention was, to make that suggestion.
The emergency access is the most important thing in my mind. The safety aspect, I don't want to see any more flying cabanas. Not to say that we won't. I'm not in favor of putting the cabanas 5 feet apart. I think with the tie downs being outside of the footprint of the cabana, it's going to cause a little problem. Hopefully people will get used to it. If the tie downs being outside the cabana does not leave you enough room for your vehicles to get through, then I think that imaginary line should move forward to make sure that you have enough room for your vehicles.
There's already been discussion with Dustin and Public Works about adjusting where some of the trash can poles are because of the amount of sand that's accreted post-hurricane ICIS a couple of years. So some of that's going to get adjusted a little bit to make sure we have enough room and we're not driving up in the toe of the dune. Plus the storm just before Labor Day last year when we got a lot of sand. So some of that we're hopefully going to alleviate. All these things, and certainly we gave a recommendation a couple of weeks ago whenever the Beach Patrol review was, and we're going to do everything we can, the best of our ability with the manpower we have to take care of the town ordinances and life safety. And ultimately, I am the fire chief, and life safety is the biggest concern. And as far as the cabanas, however you guys go, you know, we're gonna do the best that we can. Some of those recommendations, you know, some may work better for us, some may not. There's, you know, I'm constantly talking to other fire chiefs along the coast, and I always ask about cabanas and what they do. And some of them don't have to deal with it. Some of them deal with other things. Ocean Isle would just change to allow wind-driven devices. So it's a constant thing in my head, believe me.
And for I agree that we should change where the cabanas can be, to not have them between 3rd and 29th.
And Chief, you believe that keeping those cabanas away from the pier more is a safety issue, and hopefully there will be more space there in order to alleviate some of the congestion and some of the problems that you've had in the past.
That's
safety wise.
That's one thing that we've talked about over and over again, especially this past summer and the summer before, and it's one of those things we want to try. I don't know how or what's going to change the congestion around the pier.
Mm-hmm.
And
Good
I
point.
agree.
Good point.
And I don't think that's going to change, but we have to control something. So,
and these are things that you want to, and you talk about a lot, trying, you know, you let's face it, I'm not out there all the time on the beach. These guys aren't out here all the time on the beach. You are, the safety patrol is, and you have to be sort of our eyes and ears out there a lot of what's going on, and the good, the bad, the dangerous, and make the recommendations to us so there can be a safer environment out there. And I agree, you know, people, there's a lot of congestion there. We force the congestion by the way we park, by the way we have parking on the island. We force congestion around the pier, and there is a lot of congestion around the pier, that's for sure. So I think we got to go with your recommendations, try your recommendations, and come back at a later date and see how they're working, and maybe make some other changes if necessary. We got to think of safety first. There's no question in my mind.
we're probably, by pushing it from 1st to 3rd, that may take, I don't know exactly, but 10 to 14 cabanas out of the mix. And from 27th to 28th, there's no houses. There's no access at 27th. So pushing it from 27th to 29th, you know, we're decreasing the number of cabanas in that same ballpark number. Don't totally quote me on that number, but I could pull up some pictures on my phone and tell you how many cabanas that could be there from previous pictures.
Mr. Mayor.
You're taking them out of the most congested area, among other things.
And you're also opening up the 12 by 12 area for people that do not have cabanas to be able to use that space.
I'm good.
Some member of council want to make a motion to go with the plan and set up 4th, or do y'all want to change?
I would like to make a motion that we approve the amendments for ordinance 95.073E and F as attached.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just a question.
Go ahead.
So are we approving the tie downs as well?
Well, we're not.
That's a part of it?
Yeah, in the discussion that we're not changing anything. The tie downs are outside the footprint, not included as part of the footprint, and the tie downs can go into the emergency lane, and we'll see how that works out. That's not written into,
So we are changing that.
yeah, the change of the tie downs is that they be installed as manufacturers required.
Okay, I just wanted to make
Yep.
that clear. Okay,
Any more discussion?
understood.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Chief.
Next up,
Thanks, Chief.
next up is consideration of approval to offer to purchase. The council is to consider a motion to approve the offer to 7.9 acres, which is basically right directly in front of here from Carolina Dream Golf. A purchase price of $800,000. Does any member of council have any comments, questions in regards to this as we
Mr.
move
Mayor.
forward? Go ahead.
I think this is a good purchase. We've been talking for years about having a place to move public works to. The rear of that site, near the power station or whatever you call it, is will be a great place for public works. I've seen estimates on cost of a building, steel building, would protect all of our equipment. None of it would be left in the weather. There'd be an area to buy supplies in a larger number, so they can be for less money, and they'd be on hand when they were needed to be used. And there's certainly been enough complaints about looking at public works when you come off the bridge. It's got to be somewhere. In addition, this building is to capacity. With all the development, planning department inspections are going to need more room. Eventually someone's going to have to move out of here, and I think that would be the front of that area would be an excellent place for a new police station.
At some point in the future.
At some point in the future.
Yeah. You know, we're sitting there now that we're constrained by space. We have a growing town. We have growing demands and requirements. I think one of the things is that the purchase price that got negotiated was for $800,000. The original price was $1.1 million. The town countered with $750,000, and Carolina Dreams accepted, countered again at $800,000, and the town accepted that for the 7.69 acres, and again located across the street from us here, so it's in a good position to support the town. Our demands are going to continue to grow, and the space available is not going to continue to grow. So I think it's a good opportunity and a good job, a good place for us to put our DPW and have a area to take care of future expansion if we need it.
I agree. Roughly, it's $100,000 per acre, which is a pretty good price, I think, for the land around here.
For the commercial property.
Yeah. So I agree.
Any further questions? Someone want to make a motion?
Somebody else make a motion?
So,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tom.
You got it?
No, go ahead.
I move that we approve the purchase of 7.69 acres from Carolina Dreams Golf LLC for $800,000.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next up will be our appointments of council liaisons on various organizations. We have a couple of openings, so we just need to decide who we need to put in there. We have the Brunswick Shoreline Protection Consortium liaison. We have an alternate right now as Mr. Corbett, and we need to put somebody in, whether we move Mr. Corbett to liaison and switch it vice versa, or either just put somebody directly in. What is the pleasure of the council on this?
I'd
Just on
volunteer,
this one.
I'd volunteer for that.
Okay.
You want to be the liaison, or do you want to me continue as?
It's up to you. You're the senior here. If you'd like to be the,
I'm the
Point
alternate
man.
now, but the previous principal never participated. So I've been, if you want to, it's a good one for you to move into, and I'll continue as the alternate.
that's fine.
So-
It's fine.
Okay, and then the North Carolina Beach Inlet and Waterway Association liaison, we have an opening there.
That's something that I've
Mr.
done.
Boardman is in.
Yeah, that's something that I've done in the past, so I'll continue with that.
Do you want to be the liaison or the alternate?
The liaison.
We move Mr. Boardman into there.
Okay.
Pleases the council, and we'll need to pick up an alternate there.
I'll be the alternate.
Does anyone else? That seem fair to everybody?
Mhm.
Does anyone
Sounds
have
good.
anyone have any discussion there and revolves around this? If not, we will move Mr. Boardman will be the liaison, and the alternate would be Councilman Nern, in case he could not attend. Mr. Nern would be attending for us, so we'd have representation. Do we have any more positions or anything that needs to be addressed? Other than that, we will keep everything the same if the council sees fit.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do I have someone to make a motion that we'll go with this? It'll be our new liaison, so everything is filled like it needs to be. Do I have a motion for that?
I'll make a motion for that.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next up is our disposition of directives. Does any member of council or our town administrator have anything that needs to be addressed right off of these future meetings? See, right now, we have like 5 items coming on the 118. Does anyone have anything else that needs to be added right now as far as future?
Not me.
No.
Everybody's good?
No, we're good.
All right, we'll move on to the public comments. Do we have anybody that needs public comments in the last part of our meeting? If you do, please come up. Yes, ma'am. Come up and please state your name and your address. And like I said, I'll have this if it happens to run over, we'll address you as needed. Thank you.
Carol Santavica, 9109 Forest Drive Southwest. Thank you for your consideration of me for the planning board. I was not in my plan to do that, to even apply, but I was afraid that like in the old days that nobody would. So I stood up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
to give you a little bit of history on the cabana, the distance between, if you don't remember, the reason for the distance between is that people would chain cabanas together and then people couldn't walk through them. And I think that would be a health and life problem also for our emergency services. So that's why they decided on that. If you decide to minimize or eliminate distance in between, you're going to have to put a limit on how many cabanas people can put together, because I've seen as many as 6, 7, or 8. So be aware.
Good to know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Stay involved, Carol.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Erin Cosenza, 422 28th Street.
I'm sorry, what was your last name?
Cosenza, Cosenza. I just want to tap onto my sister's comments about the cabana. Thank you, Chief, for your comments, but I still didn't hear what the advantage was, because he was talking about how he had the ability today, even though you've already voted it in, but he had the ability to get emergency vehicles by the pier. A couple of things you're doing is there are renters on 27 and 28, and you have a house on 28.
I do.
Those folks rent cabanas. So now they're going to have to walk to 30th Street if they want a cabana with all their stuff. So I don't think that was considered. And the aspect of, well, we're just going to move it out. We'll see if that relieves congestion. And if it doesn't, like Tracy said, are you going to move them out 2 more? roads. So ultimately, cabanas will only be allowed at the ends of the island. So it's a keen way of getting rid of cabanas on the island, isn't it? Because a lot of you people don't like cabanas. So to go with that, I'm kind of lost, Mr. Corbett, in your discussion about there is no reduction in cabanas. So if you still have 150, but you're eliminating enough for 10 to 15 between the two streets on each side, so let's say that's 30, those 30 have to then go at the ends of the island, correct?
There's no reduction in vendor cabanas.
Correct.
Limit of 150.
There's 150 you said allowed.
Yeah, and there's room for over 300 cabanas within the walkways now.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Get rid of the cabanas. You're just going to have more umbrellas up there. And the whole thing about the cabanas being all over the island, that was one day there was like a microburst on the island. Nobody expected it. They were all over. If you had them on the other side, because I'm on the west side, I didn't see the flying cabanas, but I'm on the beach every single day. So anyways, lastly, I think that for 22, this is in place because you voted it in. As a citizen, I would for 23 like to see how you guys define success for this new ordinance. What are the numbers? What are you going to be tracking? And how do you prove to the public that this worked and it improved the health and safety of everybody on the island? What did the vendors lose? What did the citizens gain? So figure out what your metrics are, and I want to see the numbers next year. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, sir.
Rich Serrato, 517 Twisted Oak Lane, Sunset Beach. I got a bone to pick. When you double the attorney's fees, there's no discussions why. Now, you may have discussed it behind closed doors because Mr. Nern said that it's been discussed, but no one knows why we're doubling our attorney fees. There's no public discussion. There's just a vote to approve it. I think the taxpayers need a little more accountability, public accountability. Closed sessions are only for certain items. And I know you talk amongst yourselves, but transparency is very critical. Otherwise, it creates apathy. I sent you a letter a couple of days ago or yesterday, I forget. I've been going 24/7. And I provided you a document dated May of 2004 that clearly demonstrates that the marshland that was donated to the town of Sunset Beach is not owned by Sunset Beach or not owned by the Twin Lakes Management. That has to be corrected. Is the town planning on correcting this issue? Yes?
Yes, it's already actually, Miss Anglin, when I reached out to her today to get all the clarifications, all that's in the works. So we will have clarification on that
Resolution.
issue.
Thank you
Yes.
very much, Mr. Mayor. I hope we didn't pay legal fees for that.
Another thing I'm gonna address while you're here, just I don't know if I should, but if I shouldn't, this is stuff luck. No, I want to address you. I want to address the question that you asked earlier when you asked in regards to the issue on the east end. We're still in negotiations. I don't know if any of y'all know it or the public know it, whatever, but the lady passed that we was dealing with, she died. So we're having to deal with the state. That's the reason it's continued to be tied out. That's the issue there. It's not that we've just put it on the back burner because we hadn't, but that's what we issue with family and things.
Jaguars layers another matter.
Everything's being looked into, I promise you. Does anyone else have anything? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for coming out.